Welcome back to the Domed In Pod. First of all, we have to say this week we've seen a lot of engagement from the community. We love it. We're always happy to banter with you guys. So if anybody has any thoughts they want to put in comments under YouTube videos or X conversations or TikTok comments, please keep them coming. We absolutely love the feedback and we love engaging with all you crazy Syracuse fans. So be sure to like and subscribe for all our content. Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
You're watching Domed In Cuse, the quick hit podcast for real Orange fans. If you love Cuse sports, hit like and subscribe. Let's go Orange.
All right, so today we're going to do our game preview. It's going to be pretty simple. We're going to do a little UConn roundup. So we'll talk a little bit about UConn, kind of where they're at, a little bit about the game last year since we played them, a little bit about their week one matchup, although there's not much to take away. Then we'll get into our four downs. We're going to do four downs on things that we either want to see improve from last week or things that we want to see continue from last week or earlier in the season as we go later in the season as well. And then finally, we're going to do a little Fran Brown roundup because, we always like to keep our eye on what Fran's saying in his press conferences and just kind of any media availability that he's had. So we're going to go ahead and start with the UConn roundup. UConn, week one, they played Central Connecticut, the Blue Devils. There's absolutely nothing we can really take away from that video. The Blue Devils are virtually a D3 high school type program. They came out and they played football 59-13 UConn. It was an absolute beatdown. The one thing I will say is the guys on UConn that are expected to be the guys looked like the guys in this game. Skylar Bell, the receiver, he's probably going to get a shot to go pro. He had a big game, 4 catches, 135 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had a big game against us last year. He had over 100 receiving yards, 10 catches versus us, as well as Joe Fagano, who's back at UConn. He was their starter last year. He had a pretty good game against us in the Dome. And again, he ripped apart Central Connecticut. And then from the running back position, they have Cam Edwards and Mel Brown, both of whom had pretty good games in the Dome last year. We know week one we struggled to tackle. Cam Edwards is a guy who he gets his pad level low, and you better go in there ready to tackle because he's going to take a hit. He's going to give a hit kind of running back, and he's going to keep those legs moving. So we got to wrap up. We got to make our tackles against him. And then they still have Lewis Hansen, who is their white tight end. He got a touchdown for them last year. That's the kind of guy that always fucking kills us, and he's not that good, but he's gonna fucking kill us because fuck. So that's a guy. TJ Sheffield, who was on this team last year and had a big game against us. He had 10 catches against us last year. He is no longer here. Against Central Connecticut, a bunch of guys saw action, sophomores all over the place for this team. So we'll see from this team who pops from that group. Parker, Harper, Vereen, Chikioko, Bowman, Murphy, just a bunch of random guys caught balls. So there's nothing really for us to take away from that yet until we see those guys in action against our defense, right? Because we're going to be, even if we're not great, we're better than Central Connecticut. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is last year, this is a defense that Kyle really picked apart. They brought in a kid from Temple who was their leading tackler in this game, the linebacker Taekwon King. They did lose their leading tackle from last year, but the one thing I noticed is that a lot of the guys on the outside and the secondary for them are pretty similar. So their best corner was Mills last year, and I think he's still their best corner. Daryl Gill absolutely abused him last year. I mean, every time he was one-on-one with Gill, Kyle McCord was just deep shot Gill, deep shot Gill. When they switched him off onto somebody else, Kyle was picking on that kid. So that's something that's interesting is just that their secondary, I don't think is going to be much improved from last year. We will see, but that was kind of a weak spot for them last year, and we were really able to attack it. So we'll be able to see what Angeli has in this game, and I hope Angeli is able to spread the ball around. But with physical matchups that we have, like JRS, who's big and physical, or Jonte Cook, who's a real speedster and hard to contain out there, like let's see if those guys can kind of game break for us, and then hoping that Daryl Gill, who only had a few catches in week 1, has a huge game here because he absolutely abused this team last year. And then finally, you know, they're not as big, they're not as talented defensively as Tennessee was. And we saw what Yazin did to Tennessee. I'm excited to see what Yazin can do to a defense that is not that quality. These guys are going to have a tough time, I think, tackling Yazin. So let's see where that leads. LeQuint had a great game against them last year. He ran angry, he ran mean, and that's what I just want to see from Yazin this week. So kind of that's our quick 30,000 view of UConn. Tab, I don't know if you have any thoughts from last year's game that you want to talk about.
Yeah, honestly, I felt like last year's game, it honestly wasn't one of Syracuse's better overall performances. I wouldn't say like we let UConn hang around in this game for a while. It ended being a one possession game. And yeah, we were in control, but UConn was in this ball game for a while. This isn't the same UConn team is the big takeaway that I had last year. And they bring it back quite a bit coming into this year, at least at key positions. And like, you can't just not show up for this game. That's the big takeaway. We do need to show up. We got to play good football. There's going to be major advantages that we have in this game. And if we played our strength, this should be a game that we can control from start to finish. But
so the one thing I'll say,
this has some talent. Like Skylar Bell is a good player. The running back's a good player. They bring back 2 quarterbacks with experience. Like, we got to come in with a game plan. We need to execute.
So the one thing I was gonna say is like, when it comes to the UConn game last year, I watched back that whole game, and UConn was in that game because they were playing us pretty tough. But we made more than a few mistakes in that game that if we were playing against better opposition, we wouldn't have won that game. We let them hang around in that game, as you said, but we were also in control of the whole game. So it never got to a point in that game when I was in the rewatch where I was like, oh, this was a moment where if it went a little differently, we would have lost. It just didn't feel like that kind of game. Sure, they kept it competitive and they didn't let it get away, which is I think, a big credit to coaching at UConn and Mora Jr., who I think is a really good coach. And I think he's great for UConn. I think he's brought this program back from, the absolute abyss. And credit to him for that. But that team fought and they stayed in the game when we made mistakes. But that never, to me, when I even on the rewatch, felt like a game that we were going to lose. No, easy to say when I knew we were going to win, but that is how I felt rewatching it.
I agree with that. It was a game that we were ahead start to finish, so there wasn't like a huge threat of losing, but it was just a game that felt like it was too close for the talent gap. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was a game that was like, why are we only up 7-10 points? It's a 1-2 possession game. One thing that was a takeaway from this game is we did not run the ball in this game, which we didn't do a lot last year, but this is a game that we should have really run the ball well. 33 carries for 68 yards as a team. Even LeQuint, 20 carries for 58 yards. Like, we relied on Kyle heavily through the air last year, like for 470 in this game. We've got to be better balanced this year, which we will. Like, I think we saw that week 1. Like, we are going to be a better balanced football team running the ball. I expect a huge Eugene Willis game. Honestly, I think we are going to pound this team, make them feel us early, and I expect a big game from the big fella.
Yeah, but again, despite the fact that LeQuint only had 60 yards on 20 carries, which was not great, we did pound the rock against this team, right? And we did have ball control, and LeQuint got a touchdown. Kyle had a rushing touchdown in this game. So we did, I think, win a little bit of the physical battle in this game. And I know the stats, when you look at like the per yard average, isn't pretty in this from that rushing perspective. But when you watch the game, LeQuint was hammering them, and that did have an effect for a positive on our passing game, right? And that's the thing that I want to, make sure we don't get away from, is just like purely looking at the stats, because they were worried about LeQuint. They were bringing guys in the box. They were leaving guys on islands. And when they did that, it helped them stop the run. But it just opened up for Gill, who I think Gill had like 180 yards in this game or some shit like that, like 185 yards on 9 receptions. And Jackson Meeks had 110 yards on 7 receptions. Rondé Gadsden had 103 yards on 11 receptions.
We lit him up through the air.
So we were battering them with the ball on the ground, and they, we talked about in that Tennessee game with that pass that Joey Aguilar hit over the top. What's the uh, outcome of battering a team with the run? You're going to open up the passing game. So hopefully Yazin can, run for more yards on 20 carries than LeQuint did. But either way, the battering of this team and then throwing it over the top was super effective. And that is something I do want to continue. And even if we only get 3 yards a carry, it's still worth continuing to try to batter a team like this and try to wear them out. Because if we can get one-on-one looks, our playmakers are just better than theirs on the outside.
Yeah, I agree with you. Generally speaking, this game I think was an indicator of what we were as a football team last year. Though, like, I do think, yeah, LeQuint had some success against this team, but we should be able to run on UConn no matter what they're doing on defense. To be candid, like this is we should not be struggling to run the ball for 3 yards a carry against UConn ever. I don't think we're going to have that issue this year, but I agree generally. Like we are going to be committed to the run. We've got to be committed to the run, even if they load the box, run the ball, and then we'll take our shots over the top. And I just expect us to have more success with the balance this year than we did last year.
We should mention this was a Week 11 matchup last year or so. It was both teams were 7-3 in this game. So we were a little bit beaten up at this point of the year. It was in between going West Coast and East Coast. So there was, I think, a lot of factors, and I don't think our offensive line had its best game in this one last year. So, hopefully that is something that, we're a little bit fresher this year. We're able to beat them on the ground a little bit more, but again, we'll see. Again,
I think actually you bring up a good point though. Like this was the game before Miami last year. Like
right.
This was a definite look ahead spot for the team last year. Like again, I almost see it as the exact opposite direction from last week, where Fran just got so much to get the guys riled up about frankly just leaving a lot of meat on the bone, coming out kind of lackadaisical last week. I expect just way different energy from the start in this game, and I think we're going to see that.
Totally. I think situationally, when you look at this spot for Syracuse, you're coming off of a tough loss versus a really good team who, outside of, as we talked about, spotting them a 17-point lead and looking a little rattled to start the game, Syracuse did a pretty good job hanging in that game, playing tough with that Tennessee team towards the end. Now you're coming up against a team that's going to be a level down in competition. It's even a few levels down, right? Because we're a level down from Tennessee, and we should still be a level up from UConn, right? So it's a few levels down from where Tennessee was as a team. Your next week game is Colgate, so there's no look ahead spot here, right? You really are going to focus fully on this game and be present for this game. It's early in the season. Hopefully there aren't too many injuries that come out of last week. We'll kind of see as we get closer, because you never want to say this guy's here, this guy's there when we just don't know yet. So we'll see what the injury looks like at the end of the week, but we should be mentally and physically prepared for this game from just a situational spot perspective. All right. So let's get into our 4 downs here. We're going to do little 4 downs, what we saw from last week, what we want to see going forward. For me, I'll go first. I'm first down. Here I am, set hut. What do we need to do? We need a fucking tackle. Just make a fucking tackle. Somebody hit somebody. We miss Marlowe. I miss Marlowe. I miss Marlowe a lot. What is there to say? That kid made every big tackle for Syracuse for the last 4 years, and I really miss him. And I hope somebody from the linebacker spot can step up and make a tackle. I hope Tank, if he gets a running back in the backfield, obliterates him. I hope he gets 15 yards targeting instead of fucking missing tackles. Like, that's my thing, is like, I'll take a targeting penalty early in this game if somebody would just lay a fucking hit on somebody. And I'm going to be fucking frustrated if we can't make tackles early in this game.
Yeah, I think tackling it's the number one issue coming out of last week. It dates back to last year. We have got to wrap up. It's just infuriating to watch as a fan that even when you do feel like guys are in position to make a play, we're just not getting guys on the ground. And it's happening in key moments. Anytime we need a big play, we're just not getting a guy on the ground. And I think every fan feels how you just felt there. It's just the most frustrating experience watching our defense at times. And it just simply has to be better. We cannot continue this way. And it's just not, it's really not a hallmark of what Fran wants to build. Like, he wants to build tough, grinded out football teams. And that's just not what we're embodying right
We'll get more into it. We'll talk more into it in the Fran Brown Roundup, but he did talk about confused or scared, and it looks the same on tape, which I thought was a pretty good indictment and should light a fire under these guys' ass. I thought it was well said by him. He didn't call out anybody specifically, but he kind of let it be known, like, yo,
now.
pick this shit up.
Totally. That was the most pointed I think I've seen him at times in a press conference. We'll get to that later, but this is clearly something that is driving him nuts. And I
appreciate that, because it's driving fucking me nuts.
it has to. I mean, there's no way as a football coach it can't. And you can tell that now. I think he is just going to take it upon himself to fix the problem. And if we can't fix the problem, we're just going to have to make changes. Whether what that is down the line, we'll have to see. But it's just something that's got to be fixed. It's just you're playing football. You've got to be able to tackle.
Totally.
Yeah. So for second down here, my second key stab at this here, we'll just go to the offensive side of the ball. I think Steve Angeli just frankly has to take care of the ball this week. I think first game, some of that was going to be expected going against a tough SEC defense, but those turnovers, and I think just specifically how and when they happen, that can't happen every week, and I think you give them grace for the first game, but you just want to see improvement on these sort of things. Like, we can't have fumble sixes. We can't have what essentially is another kind of functional pick six when you throw an interception basically and hand the ball to the team in the red zone like that. He's got to take care of the ball. Should be a more relaxed situation from just a defensive personnel standpoint.
And at home.
Exactly. We're at home. It should be easier to communicate. I want to see him direct traffic and really just take care of the ball this week.
I would say that that's a great second down. That's a key for this game. The other thing is, and we talked about this, I said this on the last episode, when I rewatched the game and I rewatched Angeli specifically, my first takeaway watching the game was, oh, that wasn't great. My second takeaway watching the game the second time was, wow, there was a lot of good in there that I was maybe forgetting about, because the first time the turnovers are really what stood out to me, right? And a little bit of the game mismanagement of taking the play clock down, taking sacks, that kind of stuff. And on the rewatch, I'm like, wow, there's actually a ton here that I'm impressed with. I thought Angeli was doing really well. And that's the kind of thing, those turnovers, taking those key sacks, managing the game, like, those things stand out to you, and they ruin what was a pretty otherwise good performance from him, right? And those plays can just nullify a lot of the good that he did, which is unfortunate because there was a lot of good that he did.
100%. I think there was so much good to take away from his performance. We led 4 touchdown drives against a very good defense. Probably could have scored more as well. So, like,
a few really big third downs, a couple big fourth downs. He made that nice play where he escaped in the backfield, found Clement. He made a few great throws to Jonte on third downs where he was patient. He found the deep guy. I mean, there was a lot to like about what he did. Third down for me is going to be just give Willis the ball early and often. It's something we talked about, something Fran talked about. Again, we'll get into that later, but just Willis needs to get the ball early and often. There were too many times early in series and early in downs where he didn't get the ball. We waited to give him the ball until we got a first down for some reason. And the fumble 6, that happens on 1st and 10. The interception, that happens on 2nd and 10 after a first down pass attempt. So it's like, and a deep pass too. It wasn't even like a short, it was like a deep ball that was predetermined that we're going to take a shot. So, those kind of things can be easily avoided with coaching. And I think we both agree that Nixon has been quite a spectacular offensive coordinator for us. We love a lot of what he did last year.
Yeah.
He, at times, I think, got a little pass happy last week. He was thinking he had Kyle back there and he has Steve Angeli. There's nothing wrong with Steve, but we have Willis. Let's use him. Let's get the yards. The play that sticks out in my brain from that game was when Willis finally touched the ball for the first time midway through our first drive, and he just ran Joshua Josephs over, took another lineman with him, took 6 guys to tackle him, came out of the pile, and he's going, let's go. And I just want to see that from the jump. Like, let's just get that going from the jump, because that's the kind of physicality that we talked about that puts teams on notice, and it just opens up so much for us. And we have so many playmakers on the outside who can do things that if we can get a team focused on trying to stop Yazin, trying to lay hits on Yazin, all of a sudden, boom, Daryl Gill to the outside, Justice Ross Simmons to the outside, Jonte Cook to the outside.
I agree. I also 100% we got to give him the ball in the running game. I'd also love to see a little screen action with Willis early in the game as well. Like, even just to keep the defenses honest, like, we definitely are running the ball more when he is in the backfield, which is just going to happen. But I think just give people a different look with him in the game, it's useful. And I think he does have pretty decent hands.
He does.
And it almost reminds me a little
he caught
like,
a touchdown.
Some of those guys too, it's like when the running back you don't expect to catch the screen pass is the guy who's the most lethal on the screen pass, where it's like Derrick Henry catches a screen pass every couple of weeks and starts rumbling, right? Like, my Commanders used to use Brian Robinson this way, like, not a guy you think of as a traditional pass catcher, but you get him the ball in space because teams aren't expecting it, and then you've got a big guy rumbling downfield on defensive backs. Like, I think we do want to kind of get him involved a little bit in the passing game. So I'd love to see that wrinkle kind of folded in here a little bit too. But
totally, and that goes both ways, because I agree that, I think Nixon's like, oh, if we bring him in, people think we're running. Well, you know what? Bring him in and pass the ball. He was good in pass protection. He had a few really good blocks in that game. He's a big kid. He has no problem doing it. You could throw him the ball. He's got good hands. And the other thing is, just because I'm saying we should run the ball with Willis doesn't mean I think we shouldn't run the ball with Nixon. Nixon has a role in this offense to be played, especially rushing the ball, also catching the ball out of the backfield. So I think there's a lot that we could do with both of them. And I think we have to do a better job of mixing up those plays. And instead of thinking, oh, they know a run's coming, don't worry about what the defense is thinking. They should be worried every single time a run is coming. Because if you look back at our tape when we talked about it with Tennessee, we were worried every single time a run was coming. And even when we knew it was coming, they just ran us over.
Right, exactly. We just need to impose our will. And he allows us to do that. Like, he is the one physical advantage we are going to have no matter who we're playing against. Like, we know that Willis is just going to be a load, no matter what team we're playing in the country. And so, I couldn't agree more. We just have to establish him. And I think we realize that. Fran clearly realized.
Yeah, Fran said it.
He made emphasis number one in his presser. Like, we're giving him the ball, I think moving here to fourth down, I think one thing, I'm going to go a little bit of a funky one here, but it's just something I know we've talked about at length and bothered us back to last year. We have to line up and just get our alignment better at the line of scrimmage moving forward.
Both sides of the ball.
Offense and defense. I think offense, it's a different set of reasons, I think, kind of for both sides, but I think offense tempo is just a big part of how I think we need to play. Like, and I think it's a huge advantage for us. We did it so well last year. I think Coach Nixon wants to play that way. The defensive side of the ball, if you're just not lined up, you're going to get beat at the point of attack. You're going to get blown off the line. Guys are going to be late to gaps. We're going to be hesitant. We don't know where we're supposed to be clearly if we're not lining up properly. We just have to be crisper on that stuff. And I think, honestly, offense is going to figure it out. I do feel more confident. We've seen it before. The defense, I was disappointed week one. I know it's week one, so there's just some of that no matter what. But I was hoping that was going to be a point of emphasis this year, just to be more organized. Like, that's really, I think, what it comes down to is we look disorganized. And like, you never want that. And when defenses look disorganized, that's when blown coverages happen. That's when gap scheme assignments just are missed. And then obviously the other team's off and running and you're just on your heels the rest of the game. And so general alignment, and I'm really focusing, I think, even more so on the defensive side of the ball. I just want us to look more organized, particularly pre-snap.
So we can't have the procedure penalties on offense, but that's not something that plagued us as much last year. On the defensive side, do we know who our green dot linebacker is? Because still we're rotating guys in and out, and the communication and the line and the getting set up and the being in the right gaps, it was so dismal in the first game. And I get that Fran's trying to find answers at the linebacker position, and I applaud him for trying. And he's trying Jamie Tremble out there. He's trying different combinations of guys to try to figure it out. I get it. I get why he's doing that, but that is going to lead to alignment issues. And I'm hoping that what we see as the season goes on is more consistency of who's playing in the linebacker position, maybe a little bit more better communication from that spot specifically. And then on top of that, I'm kind of hoping that one of the big reasons we were misaligned was because Heupel was just running his scheme to perfection, and they ran it pretty damn well. And that when Heupel's scheme works, that's what defenses look like against them. They look like they can't line up properly. They're getting run over, and then the second they try to stop the run, Heupel's killing them for passes. And Heupel, I thought, called an amazing game. I'll go back on that. I think he's one of the best coaches in college football. And so I'm just hoping, but again, I'm hoping against what the history is, because the history is that it doesn't matter that it was Heupel's offense. Our defense can't get lined up. So
Totally.
I hope that it's something that gets better, but it's really just hope. It's not based on any kind of facts.
And I think while I agree with you, like Heupel's like for a team that has these issues, Heupel could not be a worse sort of coach to play against, because he just wants to put you in the blender immediately,
Heupel on the road in a dome, like in Atlanta in a dome versus Tennessee, was the worst way our alignment issues could have started.
Totally, but I think where I'm, and again, this is wishful thinking because it is week one, but you have all offseason to prepare for this. It's not like that was a surprise that we were playing Josh Heupel in this fast-paced offense.
Point.
He was going to run us in this game, and so I agree. It's just like I'm hopeful that maybe we just see improvement because the scheme we're playing against just allows us to have more time to process. But history last year was not great from that side of the staff. So we'll see. I think hopefully we see improvement. I think Connecticut gives us a good opportunity to just at least have more physical advantages on defense, but we just got to be more organized.
One thing we haven't really talked about in any of our podcasts, we have talked about it offline a little bit. The defensive line actually did look better. That is one thing I will take away. I know we think back to that Tank missed tackle, but even on that play, that should have been a nothing play, because it should have been tackled by 3 other guys after him too, and that should have been a 5-yard gain at most. But I actually thought our defensive line did pretty good against what was a pretty stout Tennessee offensive line. I thought our defensive line did pretty good. We were in the backfield a little bit. Joey Aguilar can move, and he's a bigger kid. Like he looked pretty buff in there. So I was actually impressed with our defensive line, and I hope that maybe is something that can carry over and potentially help some of these issues. Is if we can create a little havoc in the backfield, maybe it just helps us get a little more confident, helps our linebackers run downhill a little bit more. But again, that's just hoping to see, something that hasn't quite been exactly presented to us on tape too much. But I was impressed with the defensive line.
I thought the defensive line was stout. I at least saw it with the problems that we had. They weren't the major issue, at least in the run game, which is kind of counterintuitive to what you think. They weren't getting just completely blown off the ball. I think they were playing disciplined, like in what their assignments were. I think like we just don't have game records on that in that group. And so
we're looking for a Marlowe replacement, right? The guy who did everything.
We kind of need a guy we do need our linebackers to make plays. Like our defensive linemen just aren't. That's not their skill set, is making disruptive plays.
Fran Brown Round Up. Let's finish it off here with the Fran Brown Round Up. Some of the quotes that he had this week, I think we talked about them. I'm just going to run through a couple. You stop me if you want to say anything, Tav. Confused or scared on tape looks the same. Really talking about guys hitting in practice and talking about how they did a lot of hitting in practice and it didn't translate to the game. And what does that look like? And him just saying confused or scared, it looks the same. I thought that was a pretty pointed shot at the defense and a little bit of like, hey, wake the fuck up.
Totally. I think that was certainly a wake-up call at the defense. We looked tentative, particularly trying to tackle guys. I mean, we looked just not sure of ourselves, particularly in the running game there. So certainly something he was frustrated with, to say the least, there in his presser. And I think Fran is just such an outwardly competitive guy. Like, you can tell how much it hurts him. And I think when he thinks guys, frankly, aren't competing at the level that he wants them to compete at, that's what irks him the most of anything he sees out there on the field.
It also is a little bit of a shot at the defensive coaches as well,
Certainly.
because he's saying confused or scared, but if they're confused, that's on coaching. So
Yeah.
he's a little bit calling out everybody. It's not just the players; it's everybody. And I like to see that, because the way that Fran does that is Fran says those kind of things, and then he says it's all on me.
Yeah.
Right. So he's not shirking any accountability. He's not trying to pass blame to other people. He's pointing out the issues. He's making a pointed comment that he hopes his team and his coaching staff is going to hear. And then he says, it's on me. I got to do a better job. I got to figure that out. We're going to have to figure that out. So, again, the one thing that I love about Fran is that when I watch the game, I have takeaways that I'm like, why didn't we do this? Or what was the issue with this? And Fran is always addressing them, but he keeps everything simple. So he didn't make it we have to do a scheme and this was a thing. He said, no, we have to tackle. We have to go hit somebody. And that's exactly how I felt watching the game. And I appreciate like the simplicity and the honesty of it, because at the end of the day, it's a simple fucking game. You hit people, you try to avoid getting hit. It's that simple.
It's true. I agree. And I think Fran was more pointed in his, we'll call it, comments or criticism than he typically is. I think there were things that irked him in this game and stuff that he, I think, wanted to be improved heading into this year, and it wasn't. And he was clear he's going to meet with his coaches. They're going to fix it together, and then it's kind of on his staff to make sure that the players start.
For sure. Another quote that he had, Yazin, he could play better. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah,
he could be even better.
I think that was some coach speak, like I think he's trying to keep his guy engaged, make sure he's not getting a big head there. But
I love that, because he's challenging him to say, hey, like, yeah, you got 91 yards. Why don't you get 150? You got 3 touchdowns. Why don't you get 4? I don't think
Fran is out here trying to give out candy after a 20-point loss.
No.
That's just not in his MO. Like, he's not trying to butter guys up in ways when he just thinks the team needs to be better. So I love Fran's demeanor. It's what makes him just a quote machine. But it's just such another example of just who he is and what.
And Yazin, from what we've seen, looks like a kid who just has a good head on his shoulders, is going to take that the right way and is going to keep pushing. So we'll see that. Another interesting quote was they were like, oh, well, Tennessee has better players. He's like, no, my players are good enough. And that's the kind of confidence I want to see from my head coach. I don't actually know that that's totally true. He's like, our players are good enough. They're just as good as the Tennessee players. Judging by just like high school recruiting rankings, that's like factually incorrect. But I get what he's trying to do there, which is not pass blame to the players all the time, which I really appreciate, because, I think him and E-Rob and Nixon, they had chances throughout the offseason during camp to like skewer kids from last year and be like, this is, well, not really Nixon so much because the offense worked, but E-Rob and him had a chance to like skewer kids from last year and be like, defense wasn't good enough, this, and this, and they never did it. They talked really positively about the guys that were here, the examples that they set, and how they think they could build off of what they did last year. So again, I love Fran taking the accountability, not passing blame to the players every chance he gets, and being like, hey, we got to do a better job as a coaching staff because we have good enough guys. We have to go out and execute.
I agree. I like the mentality. I think obviously, like, this was, again, rally your locker room sort of thing. Like, I think Cuse has guys certainly that can play at the level of Tennessee and other schools. I mean, I think Tennessee was trying to recruit a couple of our players this year. I mean, I think Angeli was a guy that they certainly wanted Mora Watson, I think, in the offseason, who didn't end up there. But yeah, I mean, like, it's not a mentality Fran is going to have. Like, he is never going into a game thinking he's number 2. He
anyone, anywhere, anytime.
Yeah. I think one position group he may think differently on is one I think we're going to talk about here in a second, though, because there's some funky stuff happening right now with some defensive personnel.
So I think the last quote that we were going to talk about was the Jamie Tremble quote, which caught us both by surprise. I didn't see it in real time. I saw it on the rewatch. I think you were surprised
Yeah.
by it when we were doing a little film room action. My take on this, and he said, "Hey, Jamie Tremble's like a freak athlete. I got to get him on the football field." You know, talked about his measurables, his vert jump, his speed. He wants to get him on the field. I can appreciate that. Fran said we're going to see more two-way players this week. If Jamie Tremble is playing a linebacker, that means Fran's worried about the linebacker position at the
Yeah,
very
yeah,
least.
yeah. I mean, I think there's no other way to take that. I mean, there's a small part of me that acknowledges that Valaria looks like a good, solid ACC tight end, and there may not be that immediate opportunity this year to catch a ton of balls for Tremble with the receivers that we have. But you don't. I mean, you don't move a pass catching tight end to weak side linebacker unless you have major issues at linebacker. Like it just this should be worrisome, I think, to Orange fans a little bit for just what we think of, frankly, the linebacker group right now. I mean, the idea that we're moving him there, and frankly, he was playing major snaps in this game, like significant high leverage situations, third downs, red zone trips. Like he was in the game, like and playing large snaps. Like he is going to play on this side of the ball. It sounds like, and potentially maybe starting. And
And there's other guys there that are going to do that. But again, my take is a little different from yours. I think he's just trying to actively recruit guys and keep guys engaged. And he doesn't want guys leaving the program. I think it's pretty much, hey, Valari's our starting tight end. We're going to look to get you involved on offense, but Valari's the starter. So we're going to find ways to get you on the football field. And if that means you're going to have to play a little defense, you have to play a little offense, you're going to get your snaps. They're just going to come in creative ways. And you know what? I applaud Fran Brown for this. He's trying something because in today's college football, these kids are not patient. They don't want to sit around and wait. They don't want to not play. And he even said this in his press conference. He said, "You know what sucks more than losing? Losing and not playing." And I think
yeah,
he really feels that, and he wants to give kids a chance to compete. And if they're going to have the measurables that he thinks can work on the defense or the offensive side of the ball, he's going to give them a chance to play both ways. And you know what? It might not work, but I really appreciate that Fran is trying things because the
yeah,
worst thing you could do as a head coach is to stop trying new things.
I know, like we talked about, I don't hate him for just throwing shit at the wall right now. Like I get what he's trying to do with this. This just doesn't happen unless you have a weakness at a position group.
No, totally,
You
totally.
know,
He was not the starting Sam linebacker if you're
no,
stacked
right,
at
exactly.
linebacker.
This
No,
was not the
totally.
plan in February to have Jamie Tremble doing this. I'm talking about his brother now, but
Unless it was, unless
I think they said, I think he said in a presser that it happened in camp.
spring, yeah, it happened. No, it happened in the beginning of camp. It happened in the beginning of
So
camp.
it's not like something that was a huge part of the plan. I think it probably was starting to pop in camp that we may have issues in this position group, or we may need to just shift some talent there to try and figure some stuff out. But I think just certainly something to keep an eye on. I want to see how involved he is. I think, like we talked about in the film session, he didn't particularly look like a natural linebacker out there. We'll say he wasn't particularly involved. I wouldn't say in the plays that he was in,
But
that's
he was in there and he was looking like a speed rusher, a guy who's trying to come off the edge with speed. And I wonder if that's what they're looking at as he's fast and he can move. So I wonder if it's just like, hey, we're going to try to get him in the game to cause havoc. As you were saying, we need somebody to make plays on defense. And maybe they see him as that kind of guy who can pop up and make a big tackle for loss, make a big sack. Maybe if he's out in coverage because he's got good hands, he can make an interception. So maybe there's some playmaker to him on defense that we unlock. I don't know. Again, I don't hate it. And the other thing is, you're saying we're not doing this if we're strong at linebacker. Well, we're not strong at linebacker. We clearly have issues and we've got to do something. So trying to play a freak athlete in that position, like why not? Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't. But I appreciate Fran trying things. I really do.
That's what it is. It's a swing, and it's just something to keep an eye. Something to keep an eye.
All right, that's going to be a wrap for this Domed In preview. Please like and subscribe. Please keep commenting. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the game this weekend and what you think the Orange can do to be more successful. Let's hear from you. If you have some additions to our 4 downs, let's hear it. If you have thoughts on Fran Brown's press conference, let's hear it. If you have thoughts on the game from last year and what you think Syracuse could do, differently this time around, let's hear it. Please engage with us and please like and subscribe.